All right, everyone. So now we're going to be going through our band warm-up. So this is a very specific band routine. It does require you to have two identical bands that are either able to be held by a partner or attached to a fence. You can do these with J bands or any kind of two-band system. If you want to purchase a set of bands, we do have some available here at the facility. You will need to reach out to me personally in order to set that up. But I can either drop those off to your home and just kind of do like a porch drop off, or I can leave them in a mailbox here at the facility for you. So if you would like to get a set of bands, please let me know and I'll gladly get those to you. But that being said, let's go ahead, let's take a look at this band warm up, and let's get into it. We got 7 movements to go through. So number 1, it's called a standing row. What we're going to do is we're going to have those hands straight out in front of us, bands kind of at shoulder height or just above. From this position, what I'm going to do is I'm going to row backwards till my elbows come flush with the back of my shoulders, and then back again. We're going to do that nice and controlled 4 times, and then after the 4th repetition, we're going to go nice and quick for 4 controlled reps as well. It's 2, 3, 4, and now for my explosive quick reps, 1, 2, 3, 4. The idea behind going 4 controlled reps followed by 4 quick ones is to basically take the same quality of movement from the slow repetitions into our fast reps. Just like throwing a ball or hitting a ball, we want to be able to control a really explosive movement while it's happening in real time. If we can't control that movement first, in a very controlled, slow environment, we're never going to gain the control of the swing, of the throwing motion at high velocity as well. So that's what we're trying to train here, is taking control into a dynamic, into a very explosive pattern. So once again, the way you warm up has very direct influence over how you perform in game and in practice. All right. So the second exercise we're going to do is a reverse fly. So very similar starting position, except instead of starting with our thumbs turned in and our palms facing the ground, now we're going to start with our thumbs facing the ceiling, almost like we're holding 2 bottles of water out in front of us. Draw those shoulder blades back, open up your hands till they hit the wall behind you, imaginary wall, and then bring it back into the middle. We're going to do 4 slow, 4 quick. 2, 3, 4, and then 4 quick ones. Good. All right, so you'll notice that as I'm doing these, what I'm really trying to do is control my entire body, not just the bands themselves. So, you might find that as you're doing some of these, your body's kind of swaying back and forth quite a bit, and you're struggling to stabilize. That's where, once again, your warm-up, focusing on good balance stability becomes important. You got to control that core, control the ankles, knees, all the small stuff. But secondly, we need to be aware of it. So really try and fight to keep yourself stable as you're going through this band warm-up. But that being said, number 3 is called a pull-down. So with a pull-down, we are going to get into what is called a hip hinge position. A hip hinge is where, if you imagine for a second, a rod going straight through the top of my head and going down through my body right here, I'm going to kind of shoot my hips backwards, my shoulders and head are going to fall forwards, and my entire torso moves as one. What a lot of people tend to do when they're doing this band warm-up is they just bend their knees and they stay nice and upright. Okay, yes, the knees are going to bend a little bit, kind of doing what I call softening the knee up like butter, but we want the hips to go back, the shoulders to fall forward, and this is going to be the position that we do our band work out of for this next movement, for our pull downs. Okay, so in that hip hinge position, palms are facing the ground, we're going to pull back to our back pockets, hold, and a nice controlled back again. Same idea, 4 controlled, 4 quick reps. 4 quick ones. There you have it. So, kind of quickly coming back to the hip hinge position. A hip hinge is a really fundamental position or pattern to get into in really any athletic arena. If you want to throw hard, if you want to hit a ball really hard, really far, learn how to hip hinge really well. It's an extremely fundamental pattern. All elite athletes are going to be able to access a very good hip hinge position. Now, our first 3, I want to show you guys this really quick. Our first 3 movements, so the standing row, the reverse fly, and the pull down, all happen from this high anchor position. Okay, so you can see kind of my setup here. I've got a bunch of bands for use in the facility, but my first 3 happen up at this high anchor. Hiding down beneath here, we've got another one. The next 4 here are going to happen at that low anchor position. So I'm going to move my bands down, and then we'll go ahead and do the next 4. So for this, if you're doing this at home and you don't have the clips or a fence to put them onto, or if you've got bands that somebody needs to hold, simply just have them kneel down. I wouldn't suggest having somebody stand on the bands in case it slips out from underneath their foot. The last thing you want is a band that snaps or slips and comes back and hits you, especially when you're facing it, because it can hit you in the face. So do make sure you're being safe as you're doing this. But I'm just going to adjust my camera quickly. Our next one is called a 90-90 row. So we're going to start almost like we're doing that standing row where our hands are up here and we're rowing back. We're just starting now from a low anchor. That's the only difference. Except once we've done our row, we're then going to go ahead and rotate into this 90-90 position. Now, the reason it's called a 90-90 position is because as I row, I'm going to get into about 90 degrees here, and we call it a 90, but we really want to be inside 90 degrees here. So you can see 90 degrees and under 90 degrees. Really important of a couple things. Number 1, that when we're doing that row, the elbow gets to shoulder height. What will happen when a lot of people are doing this is they do the row from down here and they keep the elbows down beneath the shoulders. If we're looking at throwing a ball for a second, an elbow that stays below the shoulder while we're throwing is placing a ton of stress on the shoulder, on the elbow itself. So what we're doing is effectively patterning out our body and our mind to think, rotate at shoulder height. If we're doing this repetitively down here, we're strengthening a poor quality position. We want to strengthen a good position. So really make sure you're rowing those elbows up to your shoulders. Number 2, we want to make sure that we're rotating and staying inside 90 degrees with our hands. Now I know I mentioned this briefly, but to kind of explain a little bit further, when we're throwing a ball, as I'm laying my hand back and kind of going into some external rotation of the shoulder here, that hand needs to stay inside 90 degrees. The closer it gets to 90, and especially beyond, all that force is going straight to your elbow. And as everyone knows, if you've played baseball for long enough, or been around baseball long enough, or you don't even really need to have played baseball to know this, Tommy John is a huge issue in overhand athletes, in throwers especially, baseball being the hot one. So what we're really trying to do is make sure that we're keeping that elbow safe by staying inside 90 degrees. We're patterning that out with this movement. So long explanation for a really simple band movement, but we pay attention to the small stuff in here because it's the small stuff that makes a big difference. So we're going to do our 90-90 rows. Once again, 4 slow, 4 quick. Row it, rotate, keep those elbows up near shoulder height, and back. Row and rotate, that's 2, 3, 4, and then 4 quick. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. All right, next we've got a front raise. I'm going to move my camera here. All right, you can kind of see some of my tools in the background. So with this front raise, I'm going to turn myself around. The bands are now going to be on that low anchor behind you. You're gonna get that chest out nice and big, shoulders back, standing nice and tall. Raise those hands up to eye level, and then relax back down. Control the whole movement. 2, 3, 4, and 4 quick. Good. All right. Next, we got 2 more. We got a press plus. So instead of starting down near our front pockets, we're going to slide up almost like we're about to do a bench press or a push-up. Okay, so from this position, let those bands pull you back a little bit. Feel a nice little stretch in the front of your chest and your shoulders. From here, you're going to press out, kind of on an upward angle. And then once you're at the end of your press, take your shoulder blades and try and drive them a little bit further, as far as you can. And then control it back to the starting position. We're going to do 4 slow and 4 quick. 2, 3, 4, and then 4 quick. That plus is going to be difficult on these quick reps. Perfect. All right, last one. Got to move my camera again just because we got to turn it back around. And last one here. So, keeping the bands at the low anchor, we're going to do an overhead Y. The overhead Y, these ones are probably the most difficult or most taxing in terms of, how much is going to make that shoulder burn. But that being said, make sure you're standing close enough. The goal with all of these is not to, treat it like a weight training exercise where we're trying to get stronger. Yes, there's going to be a strengthening component to all of this. However, what we're really trying to do is just warm up the shoulder, warm up the cuff, the rotator cuffs, and just make sure that we're doing our due diligence and getting blood flow to the right areas before we do something, before we throw. So, our overhead Y, I'm standing a little bit closer to the anchor this time. I'm going to start with a handlebar grip just down in front of my groin area, and then from there I'm raising up overhead to make a Y, and then back down. We're doing 4 slow, 4 quick. It's 2, 3, 4, 4 quick ones. And there you have it. So that's our band warm-up, or at least the band warm-up that I really like to use. If you guys have questions about any other type of band warm-ups that you can use, let me know what kind of equipment you guys have. If only you'll have a single band, I can post a video on how to do a good band warm-up with one band. If you have J bands or Jagger bands, I can show you how to use those. But this is the warm-up that I prefer. This is what we use with all of our pitching athletes in facility because it's a great warm-up. You guys will find that out pretty quickly as you're doing it. So hit me up with your questions. That's our band warm-up for today. Ideally, in terms of when you would do that, do it every single time you throw. You can't do enough of it unless you're doing it, multiple times a day. That's probably a little bit too much, but once a day, right before throwing, it's a great way to warm up all the rotator cuff muscles, and muscles around that cuff, and just kind of get that shoulder stable and get some blood flowing to that area, because blood carries oxygen. Oxygen's really important for functionality. So enjoy, guys. We'll see you in the next video. Take care.